Good afternoon. My name is Larry Ray. I'm the President and CEO of Gold Ray Resources Corp., a company that trades on the TSX Venture Exchange and has the majority of its operations in China. We are currently developing a resource there with limited production at this time. Our goal is to increase this production up to about 1,200 to 1,500 tons per day. And to do that, we are negotiating with several Chinese companies, one of which will become our partner either directly into the company or into the project, which will allow us to move the project up to the desired tonnage. For further information, please visit our website at goldray.com or phone 604-531-9639.
Welcome back to the Money and Wealth Show. I'm Sterling Fox. Our special guest this week talking HST from the government side is BC Finance Minister Colin Hansen. Minister, the Restaurant Association of BC says something that a lot of voters say. They had a commitment from the Liberal government prior to the election about a year ago that the HST was not going to be entertained, let alone introduced. They say they have this in writing. A lot of voters think they heard you and the Premier and the rest of the Liberal government say, no, we're not interested in implementing the HST. You win a majority government approximately a year ago, and within nanoseconds, suddenly, it's HST time. Why the switch, and why do so many voters feel hoodwinked?
Well, I think to put in context, what happens in election campaigns is organizations send in questionnaires to political parties. And there are literally dozens and dozens of them that come in. And so one of the questionnaires that came in to the Liberal Party headquarters in Vancouver asked the question about HST. And one of the volunteers there sent the reply back that said, the HST is not contemplated in the BC Liberal platform. It quite literally was not on the radar. And as I said earlier, we had looked at it, every year pretty much it had come up. Should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? The Feds still want us to do it. And we said no. And so what happened after the election was I sat down with officials from the Ministry of Finance for extensive briefings, because we don't have contact. Like, I never initiated contact with the Ministry of Finance during the election. They contacted me about some minor things on, I think, 2 occasions. But HST never came up at all. So after the election, when we went through these briefings, one of the subjects that ministry staff broached with me was this impact of what would happen with Ontario being in an HST world and BC not.
Suddenly the playing field isn't level anymore.
That's exactly. And so I was pretty compelling when I looked especially at that reduction in the tax on investment and how much of an advantage that would give Ontario. So I went to the Premier a couple of days later and I said, I think we actually have to start looking seriously at this.
Now, some would say $1.6 billion is the tab that the Government of Canada, the Harper people, are giving to British Columbia in order to accelerate the implementation of the HST. And some would say, well, look, they're in deficit, they've overspent beyond their means. $1.6 billion from the Feds suddenly makes the BC deficit shrink a little bit, and it's a better case to present to the voters. It's about optics as much as anything else.
Well, the $1.6 billion obviously helps. And that we are in deficit. We saw from the peak before the economic downturn, the global economic downturn, to where we sort of bottomed out, we saw a drop of about $3 billion of revenue coming into the province. And that's what we need to fund healthcare and education. So, sure, the $1.6 billion of transitional funding from the federal government sort of helps us get through and still maintain those health services and other programs that people count on from the province. But we do have to get back out of deficit as fast as possible, because we can't pass on our operating costs from today on to our children and grandchildren for tomorrow. So yeah, the 1.6 is helpful, but I can tell you it was not one of the motivating factors at the top of the list.
Let me change gears for the last couple of minutes. We've got the Canadian dollar at par, virtually, with the US dollar, which shrinks competitive advantage for British Columbia exporters, regardless of what it is you're sending to the United States. The suggestion has been made for decades that maybe we ought to be a lot less dependent on our single U.S. customer and expand our marketplace. Has that happened? And how are we doing with the loonie at par with the greenback, not only across the 49th parallel, Minister, but around the world?
Yeah, it's actually a great segue from our HST discussion to this one, because what the employers of the province and the exporters are telling us is that the adoption of the HST is actually going to be a big factor in them being able to stay competitive internationally. But we have diversified our markets big time in the last 5 years with our Asia Pacific initiative. And if you look at the percentage of our exports that are going to the U.S., last year we actually dropped below 50% of our exports. Our exports into the Asia Pacific region are up to 37% last year.
I'll bet you not a lot of British Columbians know that.
No, and if you start looking at BC compared to other provinces, the only other province that is anywhere near the diversification of our export markets is Saskatchewan. So that is one of the reasons why most of the leading economists are saying that BC is so well positioned to lead Canada out of this economic downturn, and it's because of the opportunities that we have for our exports into the Asia Pacific.
30 seconds or less, that's all we've got. The Olympics, hell of a party. A wise investment. Will we see a return as we did in Expo 86 that warrants the cash outlay in the first place?
Definitely. And in fact, we're going to definitely see the tourism advantage of that, as 3.5 billion television viewers watched British Columbia. But we're also going to get the benefit out of the business hosting program that we organized as the provincial government, where we actually connected with investors, we connected with business leaders, and we made the pitch as to why British Columbia is a great place for them to come and create jobs in the future.
Our guest this week on the Money and Wealth Show has been the Honourable Colin Hansen, Minister of Finance, Province of British Columbia. Sir, thank you for coming by. We appreciate your time and your best efforts to present a positive spin for the HST. It's an uphill battle you're fighting.
Thank you, Sterling.
We'll be right back.